The organisms who do not require oxygen for their survival, if there is oxygen, they may not survive, right? Why does this happen? So, we know that aerobic bacteria, for example, Pseudomonas, what do they have? They have certain enzyme, right, that helps them with the metabolism. Metabolism, so to say, when anaerobic bacterium lack this enzyme, they will not be able to survive in the presence of oxygen, because oxygen is the electron donor for the respiration, right? So, when anaerobic bacteria do not have the cytochrome, they are unable to neutralize toxic oxygen metabolites, and hence they are known as anaerobes, right? But there are certain anaerobic bacteria which are facultatively aerobic. It means they require certain amount of oxygen, certain level of oxygen. There are some microaerophilic anaerobes which require even more oxygen for the survival, okay? But some of them are obligate anaerobes, and which we are going to study today. For anaerobes, we do not prefer the general media that we use for all the aerobic bacteria. We culture them in the laboratory, but what do we require? We require certain anaerobic conditions which are made by such instruments, such as Enoxomat, Gaspac, Macintosh. They all look like this, somewhat similar. And what do these apparatus have? They have other gases other than oxygen in their environment. For example, carbon dioxide, for example, nitrogen. Okay, so what do we do here? We remove all the oxygen that is there within this apparatus, so that these microorganisms should be able to survive. Okay, and or else we provide them with the things that have low redox potential. For example, glutathione, for example, ascorbic acid. For this, you should know what is oxidation and what is reduction. What is oxidation? Oxidation means loss of electron, right? And reduction means gaining an electron. So this material should be a reducing material, right? That's what we provide them. One very good example is RCM, Robertson cooked meat medium, right? We are talking in general about all the anaerobic infections. For that, you should know that in our body, we have anaerobic bacterium as the commensal flora. Can you name some places where they survive? In the gut, in urinary tract, in oral cavity. These are the places where these organisms are there. Why are they surviving in the moist environment? Because of low oxygen, right? If they are in contact with the external air, will they be able to survive? No. So how do these anaerobic infection present themselves? You will be able to see infection is adjacent to the mucosal surfaces that bear anaerobic flora, which is a normal flora in the body, okay? And predisposing factors could be ischemia, tumor, penetrating trauma, foreign body, or perforated viscus. What does this mean? This means that your general anatomy of the body is somewhat broken because of all these things, and these flora, they come out of their natural habitat and cause infections in the other tissues, in the surrounding tissues, right? So spreading gangrene, it can involve all the layers that are there, skin, subcutaneous tissue, muscles, bones, everything, okay? And it should have a very foul smelling, putrid smell. It should be very foul smelling. Sometimes the pus would be blackish in color. Okay, that's one thing. And there will be septic thrombophlebitis. Septic means infected. Okay, there will be toxemia, but fever will not be there. Fever is not marked in these patients. They do not respond to the antibiotics which do not target anaerobic bacterium. You have to know that you have to add anaerobic coverage if such infection is suggested. And when you see these organisms under gram stain in the specimen, you will see that they fail to grow in the normal culture which we are using for aerobic culture. Okay. So what will happen when you get the sample in the lab? You will see in the gram stain what else you will see in the pus sample along with the microorganism. It's a pus specimen, so what kind of cells you will be able to see? Will you be able to see pus cells? Right? But in this case, there will be no neutrophils. That's a very significant finding. When you see organisms there, but there are no neutrophils, it means you're suspecting anaerobic infection. Okay? Why does this happen? Bacterium destroys the neutrophils through some enzyme, lecithinase enzyme. Okay, that is why you do not see the pus cells in anaerobic pus specimen. So, there are certain special features that you will be able to see gas in the specimen. Even when you are palpating the wound, if there is an intact wound, you will be able to feel the crepitus. Okay. Certain organisms such as Prevotella, it produces this black pigment in presence of ultraviolet light. It fluoresces on the agar, and this is a actinomycetic wound. Can you see the sulfur granules? You can find the sulfur granules as well. There are certain special features. What specimens do we accept? Do we accept pus in the universal container? It is already exposed to the air. Will the bacterium survive? No. What are you taking? You are taking tissue bits from the infected area. You are taking necrotic material. Both are the same thing. You are taking aspirated body fluids. Intraoperatively taken aspirated body fluids from the site of infection, and you are taking pus in the syringes which is not exposed to the air, and you directly inoculate into the medium, into the anaerobic medium. Okay. What are the unacceptable specimens? They are all swab, sputum or voided urine. Because they are all exposed to the air, we are not accepting this sample for anaerobic infection. Then these specimens are directly put into the RCM broth because we are providing them with anaerobic medium. Then they are transported to the laboratory as soon as possible and cultured in the anaerobic setup. Okay. What is this? Robertson cooked meat medium. What does it have? It has chopped meat particles that provide with the reducing agents such as glutathione, unsaturated fatty acid. They take up all the oxygen is there. Oxygen is providing the electron, they take up all the oxygen and create lower redox potential that permits the growth of obligate anaerobes. Then with all the clinical specimens will perform gram staining. There are certain special mediums that you inoculate these organisms or, for example, anaerobic blood agar, neomycin blood agar. Neomycin is an antibiotic. Egg yolk agar, this is egg yolk agar. You can see this opalescence surrounding the colonies. Okay. Then there is brain heart infusion agar added with vitamin K and himin, enriching it for the anaerobes. Or bacteroids bilesculin agar. These are all special media that we use for anaerobic bacteria. How do you identify these anaerobes? Similarly, in aerobic, we have certain biochemical reactions. We need to check their susceptibility to certain antibiotics. There is something called as gas liquid chromatography. In this gas liquid chromatography, we are checking the products, the acids that are made by the bacterium, and we are analyzing them. They are drawn on a graph in a machine, and that's how you are able to differentiate. Okay, and we can go for automated systems such as MALDI-TOF. This applies for all the anaerobes, including non-sporing I'm going to teach you non-sporing anaerobes in the end, so this will apply to them also. Okay. What is the treatment? You can give metronidazole plus penicillin. This is most commonly used for the dental infections. Then carbapenems, you can give BL-BLI combinations or clindamycin. Clindamycin to help with the toxins. Okay. Coming to clostridial infections. What is a clostridia? You have heard about Clostridium tetani, Clostridium perfringens. Clostridia are gram-positive bacilli. They have bulging spore. Okay. They are the saprophytic bacilli. They are present everywhere in soil, fresh water, marine water, decaying vegetation, animal matter, sewage. They are present everywhere. They play a major role in recycling of the organic matter. So whenever there is something, let's say on the road you see a cattle or carcass is lying and you have this putrid smell coming off from him and it's very swollen and black, discoloration is going on, some process is going on, that is all by Clostridium. Okay. But it is also harbored in the intestine of vertebrates including human beings. So Clostridia is present in our body as a normal commensal flora in intestine. Okay. What are the few members we need to study about? Clostridium perfringens causes gas gangrene or edematous myonecrosis. Clostridium tetani, you know, it can cause tetanus. Botulinum produces food poisoning. And Clostridium difficile, very important, causes pseudomonas, pseudomembranous colitis in hospitalized patients. There is a case, somebody got admitted with a pneumonia and while he was recovering, he developed diarrhea and suddenly went into shock and died the next day. What was the causative organism? Clostridium difficile. Okay. How do they appear? In Clostridium bifermentans, there are oval and central spores. They are centrally located. In case of subterminal spores, you can see they are subterminally located like this. Here you see drumstick appearance. Have you seen drumsticks? Sticks that you help to beat the drums. They appear like this. These are Clostridium tetani. And there are Clostridium tertium which appear as a tennis racket or badminton racket appearance. They are terminal spores. Just remember this, subterminal spores, can you see here, this subterminal spores? This is the Gram-Stain picture, this is graphical picture. Here you can see oval central spores. Here you can see this drumstick appearance. And here you can see the racket appearance. In Robertson cooked meat medium, these organisms give different characteristics. For example, these are proteolases. They are causing degradation of the protein. So these appear black and foul smell. Who shows this? Clostridium tetani. And this is sacrolytic appearance. It appears as pink. What is this? This is by Clostridium perfringens. This is the major distinguishing factor in the laboratory if you are trying to find out gas gang. Then Clostridium perfringens, it's a capsulated, non-motile, gram-positive bacillus. You see that they have subterminal spores, but when you find this in the gas gangrene specimen, you will not see spores. What will you see? Only the gram-positive bacilli. Okay? They have this major toxins, 4 major and minor toxins. They also produce heat labile enterotoxin. Depending on this, their pathogenicity changes. Also, they have certain tissue destructing enzymes also. Clinically, how they are manifested, you can see that clostridial wound infections are there. They are causing intestinal infection and they are causing gas gangrene. How are they causing this? This McLennan had classified wound infection based on the areas they were taking care of. This simple wound contamination is superficial. Anaerobic cellulitis included everything above the muscles but not muscles, and then anaerobic myositis, which you name as gas gangrene. It involves everything superficial plus muscles. Okay. Then Clostridial enteric infections. What can you see? You can see that there is a food poisoning because of what? Not because of the preformed toxins, but because there was a bacterium which did not get killed because of improper cooking. And the spores survived, and when the food cooled down, these spores converted into the bacteria. They were vegetative. They survived and germinated later, and then they caused the infection. Okay, then there is enteritis necroticans, which you name as gas gangrene of the bowel. This causes ischemic necrosis of jejunum and gas in the tissue plane. This is how it looks like. This disease is also known as pig bell. Okay. Then there is necrotizing enterocolitis, which is similar to enteritis necroticans, but this one is caused by Clostridium perfringens type A, and this one was caused by Clostridium perfringens type C strain. Okay. Then there is gangrenous appendicitis. We all know what is appendicitis by now. Do we? Infection of the appendix. That was caused by Clostridium. Then there is gas gangrene. What is gas gangrene? It is rapidly spreading. How rapidly? About 15 centimeter per hour it can spread. Edematous myonecrosis occurring in association with severely crushed wound contaminated with the Clostridium perfringens or other flora. So this is also known as malignant edema or Clostridial myonecrosis. What are the established agents? Most commonly you will see Clostridium perfringens followed by novi and followed by septicum. What are the other probable agents? These are the probable agents, but you have to remember this specifically for gas gangrene. Clostridium perfringens, Clostridium novi and Clostridium septicum. What do the development of gas gangrene require? First is anaerobic environment. How will this anaerobic environment come in the body? Body is supplied by blood vessels and oxygen. What will happen? The crushing injuries or the road traffic accidents or the open fractures of long bones, they'll interrupt the blood supply to tissues, right? So these tissues, they'll have anoxia. And there will be wound contamination. During road accidents, it's very easy to get it from the road, right? Because it's a saprophytic flora. It is available in the soil. Then, spontaneous non-traumatic gas gangrene can happen in which cases? It's because hematogenous seeding of normal muscle with bowel clostridia. One good example, colorectal carcinoma. When there is tumor, when there is foreign body in the bowel, it might disrupt your intestine, and these floras, they get into the blood vessels, and through blood vessels they'll reach the normal muscular tissues, and that's how they'll cause non-traumatic gas gangrene. Okay, what are the toxins produced by Clostridium perfringens? You can see here this alpha toxin. It is the principal virulence factor. What is it causing? It has phospholipase C and sphingomyelinase activity. Along with this, it acts on the platelet adhesion factor and neutrophil receptors, and they cause aggregation of platelets and neutrophils, leading to the vascular occlusion. And vascular occlusion is what we need for gas gangrene to develop, right? What else? This theta toxin can cause marked vasodilation, and this alpha toxin along with this can directly act on the myocardial cells and cause bradycardia. Then Clostridium septicum, they have four main toxins: alpha, beta, gamma toxin. They are also lethal, hemolytic, and can lyse the DNA. They also have these high hyaluronidase, septicolicin protease, and neuraminidase. But you remember about Clostridium perfringens primarily and the mechanism of these two. Along with that, Clostridium novi has 4 subtypes from A to D. They are also coated with alpha toxin, which is responsible for gas gangrene. That's why you're commonly seeing these organisms in gas gangrene. What is the incubation period here? Just remember, for Clostridium, it's 2 days and 2 to 3 days for Clostridium septicum and 5 to 6 days for novi in the order of their etiological value. This is how a gas gangrene will present to you. But this is a much severe, much later stage. We do not wait for this stage to appear. Okay? Because there is rapid development of foul-smelling thin serosanguinous discharge does not mean that you will wait for this to happen. When the patient comes to you, you have to take decision based on the clinical presentation of the patient and not based on the microbiological investigations. Okay, that is why microbiological investigation in case of gas gangrene is supportive. Here you have to take the clinical decision. You do not wait for this to happen. What will you be able to see? On palpation, you will be able to feel the crepitus if the wound is intact in case of non-traumatic injuries. Okay? And excruciating pain. Pain more than what it looks like. Pain much severe than the wound is actually showing. Okay? Then, brawny edema and induration you saw. This gangrenous tissue will become liquefied like this, and it slows off. What will happen after this? There will be a shock and organ failure in the patient, and most 50% of the cases, if left untreated, can die. Then, what are the specimens you are taking here? Similarly, as the necrotic tissue, muscular fragments or exudates from the deeper parts of the body, you will take for the diagnosis. In direct microscopy, I told you will see thick, stubby, boxcar shaped bacteria like this, but there will be no spore. What kind of spore Clostridium perfringens was showing? Subterminal. Okay. But there will be no spore. There will be just the thick, stubby, boxcar shaped bacterium. What will you culture it into? Robertson cooked meat medium, egg yolk agar, and put it in anaerobically packed apparatus for anaerobiosis. You will not just put it into the incubator directly, okay, because we have to give them anaerobic. How is the identification of C. perfringens made? It will show you target hemolysis, double zone hemolysis. Can you see here? It's because of the two toxins. Here you can see this one hemolytic part. Beneath that there is another. This is because of the two different toxins that you will see. Then there is Nagler's reaction. You will see opalescence surrounding the streak line on the egg yolk agar. Can you see this opalescence? And this is because of the alpha toxin. And when you add anti-alpha toxin to this, you will see the zone of inhibition also. So it shows that this is because of alpha toxin. This opalescence that you are seeing, it's because of the alpha toxin on egg yolk agar. This is known as Nagler's reaction. Then there is something called as reverse Camp test. What is reverse Camp test? You are inoculating Clostridium perfringens with Streptococcus agalacti. In case of Camp test, what were we using with Streptococcus agalacti? Christie-Atkins Munch-Peterson test I told you yesterday. What were we using for Camp test? We are using Staph aureus. Here what we are using, this is reverse Camp test. We are using Streptococcus agalacti here. Okay, can you see this enhancement? This is positive reverse Camp test. Okay. Then there is heat tolerance test, which is positive in case of Clostridium perfringens. It survives at the 45 degree for 6 to 8 hours when you incubate it. Okay, this is not shown by other Clostridia. Then in litmus milk, it produces Tomic clot reaction because lactose is fermented to acid and gas. This is all specific for Clostridium perfringens. What is the most crucial step in the treatment? You do early surgical debridement. Once you suspect, you open up the patient and you see the extent of injury and you take out all the necrotic material on which the bacteria is feeding and you save all the vitalized tissue through removing all the devitalized tissue. Okay. Closure of wound is still delayed for 5 to 6 days because we want to give them aerobic environment so that they do not survive. Okay. What is the combination of penicillin you have to give in these cases? Penicillin plus clindamycin for 10 to 14 days. You might go for hyperbaric oxygen therapy or passive immunization with anti-alpha toxin serum. Okay, this was about gas gangrene. Now coming to non-sporing anaerobic infections. Okay, non-sporing means there will be no spore within them. So how will they appear? They'll appear as gram-negative or gram-negative, they'll appear as cocci or bacilli. So here it's very easy to remember, gram-positive cocci, they have coccus in the end, in their names, Peptostreptococcus, Peptococcus. Okay, and gram-negative cocci, just one you have to remember, Veillonella. This was about gram-positive, gram-negative cocci. Coming to gram-positive bacilli, here you remember, these are the good bacteriums. Bifidobacterium, Eubacterium, Lactobacillus, they are all responsible for your gut flora, they are all responsible for good gut hygiene and good immunity. So just remember these are good bacterium, Bifidobacterium, Eubacterium, Lactobacillus, okay. Then there are gram-negative bacilli, there are bacteroids. Bacteroids are commonly seen in gut flora, but they are also commonly found in gut infections if they break the intestinal barrier and come out of intestines. Okay. Prevotella, Porphyromonas, Fusobacterium and Leptotrichia. Out of this Prevotella, Fusobacterium, Leptotrichia and Spirochaetes, Treponema and Borrelia, these are the causative agents of Vincent's angina. Okay, Vincent's angina. MCQ comes, which of these organisms are the causative agents for Vincent's angina? Commonly, you will see Prevotella, Fusobacterium and Borrelia. You will see where do they have as a normal flora in the body. In oral cavity, we have anaerobic cocci, which we have Peptostreptococcus, we have Actinomyces, Fusobacterium. What was Fusobacterium? Gram-negative bacilli. We have Actinomyces. What was Actinomyces? Gram-positive bacilli. Bifidobacterium, gram-positive bacilli. Prevotella, gram-negative bacilli and Spirochaetes. In stomach, we have Lactobacillus. In intestine, I told you Bacteroides fragilis. This was gram-negative bacilli. Fusobacterium, again gram-negative bacilli. Prevotella, gram-negative bacilli. Bifidobacterium, gram-positive bacilli. In vagina, you have Lactobacillus, Prevotella and Bifidobacterium. And on skin, you have Propionibacterium. Okay. What beneficial role do these commensal flora have? What do? They compete with the pathogenic bacteria through depletion of nutrients and produce enzymes and toxic metabolites. What are they doing? They are competing with the pathogenic bacteria. They are not letting these pathogenic bacteria to grow and they are taking up all the nutrients. Okay. They modulate host's innate immune response. They enhance the immune response in the intestine. Secretory IgA antibodies. Remember? Then these bacteroids, they ferment the carbohydrates and produce volatile fatty acid that are used by host as energy source. So they are also adding to your energy source by producing these fatty acids and carbohydrate fermentation. What is other thing? They are also responsible for the production of vitamin K and bile acid in the intestine. Also, we discussed polysaccharide A of bacteroids. It protects against the inflammatory bowel disease. What is inflammatory bowel disease? Have you heard about ulcerative colitis? So they fight against these IBDs. And lactobacilli maintains the vaginal acidic pH. If this pH is imbalanced, it will lead to bacterial vaginosis. What is the clinical presentation? For that, you need to see that where do they reside. They reside, if Peptococcus, Peptostreptococcus, don't talk, is residing in the normal flora of skin, mouth, intestine and vagina, they are able to cause the infections in these areas. For example, puerperal sepsis, skin and soft tissue infection and brain abscess. Veillonella are small gram-negative cocci. They are present in pairs and short chains. This was the only cocci which was gram-negative. It is able to cause infections like meningitis, endocarditis and osteomyelitis. Bifidobacterium and Eubacterium, we discussed that they are mostly non-pathogenic, they are good bacteriums. Propionibacterium acnes, this Propionibacterium species is now renamed as Cutibacterium acnes. They are able to cause this acne vulgaris and folliculitis on face because that's where they reside, they're the common flora there. They are also able to cause prosthetic hip joint and heart valve infections. Lactobacillus, again, non-motile gram-positive bacilli, good bacterium. They are part of normal flora in mouth, gut and vagina, and they are often used as probiotic also. Okay, when you have diarrhea, you might have seen they're prescribing this bacterium. Then actinomyces we discussed yesterday, gram-positive bacilli able to cause, what do we call the subcutaneous tissue caused by bacterium, and what do we call the subcutaneous tissue infection caused by the fungus? Yesterday we discussed mycetoma. What do you call the infection caused due to fungus? Then there are Mobilincus species. You will find the species most commonly in bacterial vaginosis. Okay, this is also a part of screening. When you look for the bacterial vaginosis diagnosis, this is also, the count of these bacteria is also used there. Then there are Bacteroides fragilis. They are the most common commensal in human intestine. They have virulence factors such as capsular polysaccharide, lipopolysaccharides and enterotoxin. They can cause peritonitis, intra-abdominal abscess following the bowel injury. It means after the normal habitat is broken, it goes into the peritoneum and causes infection there. It can also cause pelvic inflammatory diseases. Then there is Prevotella. There are two kinds of Prevotella, pigmented and non-pigmented. These Prevotella, they have brown or black color colonies and they fluoresce when exposed to the ultraviolet light. I have shown you the picture before. They are isolated from lung or liver abscess, mastoiditis, pelvic or GUT, and intestine or mouth, basically the mucosal areas. Then there is Porphyromonas, which can cause periodontal disease. Similarly, Fusobacterium, Prevotella and Spirocase borrelia, I told you they are able to cause Vincent's angina, which is necrotizing gingivostomatitis. Acute necrotizing gingivostomatitis, these three are implicated in Vincent angina.